Now, all of us know that an essay's basic structure includes an introduction, body section, and conclusion. However, the real structure of an essay is actually your argument plus the evidence you use to back up this statement. And that's because there is a difference between a claim and an argument. A claim is you saying something. An argument is you saying something backed up with evidence from other sources. For example, I could sit here and tell you the sky is green. That's me making a claim. You all probably would think that I'm a bit crazy because you can see that the sky is in fact blue outside your window. However, if I sat here and I told you the sky is green because several scientists from all over the world, including Einstein, did lots of really cool science experiments and have conclusively proven that the sky is green, I have made an academic argument. And I might even convince some of you to look outside your window again to consider whether the sky really is green. This illustrates that it's always really important to back up the statement you make with evidence from other sources to make a good academic argument. Now, how do you argue? Firstly, it's really important to recognize that there are different ways of seeing and understanding things. This means you need to be able to critically analyze and evaluate the evidence for each point of view to make an informed decision as to what you believe. When you write your assignment, you then have to explain to the reader why you think the way you do. You should use reason and you should be persuasive, but you should always use references and sources to back up your claims. Now, all of us when reading an assignment tend to look for what is known as the thesis statement. This is a 1 to 2 sentence condensation of the overall argument of the piece of writing, and this means your essay should also include a thesis statement. Why is this important? Well, firstly, it tests your ability to condense your ideas into short sentences. But more importantly, it helps you to better organize your argument and to develop your argument more effectively. And finally, it provides a guide for your reader when reading your assignment to see where it is you're going with your overall argument. Now, to illustrate academic argumentation, I'm going to use the following example topic. Android mobile phones rather than Apple iPhones should be the standard smartphones used in society. Discuss. Now, for example, if I want to write in my first paragraph of my body section on this topic that talk about Android phones and the fact that their screens are less likely to break, this would be an example thesis statement for that paragraph. Android mobile phones are better suited to use in society because their screens break less easily. This thesis statement, of course, then needs to be backed up by evidence. Here I've illustrated for you a matrix of ideas to distill the argument for this topic. So in this case, the issue is whether or not Android phone screens break less easily. And now you can see I have who argues for this and who argues against this in this grid. So in terms of Android phones breaking less easily, makers of Gorilla Glass and Android phone owners argue for this. And the evidence they have, firstly, is the Gorilla Glass study on screen breakability, and secondly, Smith et al.'s confirmation study. If this is in fact true, then the implications of this would be that people won't have to fix their phones as often, therefore longer term the Android phones would be more cheap. In contrast, in the red, I've indicated who argues against this. And in this case, we have Apple arguing against this. And the evidence they have is that Apple's screen breakability testing report. Now, the implications of this is if there is, in fact, no difference between screen strength of Apple phones and Android phones, iPhones would be just as suitable as Android phones in terms of screen strength. Now, if this is the various sources of information, I have to put this together in an appropriate argument for my essay. So here I have written an appropriate argument for my essay. Android mobile phones are better suited to use in society because their screens break less easily. Android phone screens are made of Gorilla Glass, which has been shown to break less easily than iPhones. And there I have a reference for Gorilla Glass. Apple disputes the Gorilla Glass findings, however, suggesting that iPhone screens are just as strong as Android phones. And here I have the Apple reference. However, the study has not been repeated to ensure accuracy, while the Gorilla Glass finding have been independently confirmed. And here is the Smith study. This suggests that owners of Android phones would face less long-term repair costs than iPhone owners, making Android phones more suitable for general use in society than iPhones. Now, there's many things that you consider about this paragraph, and I've highlighted them for you so that I can explain them in more detail. Firstly, in blue, I have my thesis statement as I had on the previous page. In green, I've highlighted the sections that indicate positive findings for the Android phone, and in red, I have negative findings for the Android phone to make my argument. So here I have the Gorilla Glass finding that suggests Android phone screens are better suited and less likely to break. And then someone who disputes this Gorilla Glass finding, in this case Apple, in red. And then I am describing to the reader of this paragraph why I am more likely to believe the green findings than the red findings. And that is because here I've listed that the green findings have been independently confirmed, whereas the red findings have not. And this suggests that they are more likely to be true. And then in purple, I've summarized my argument and explained the implications of why that is important. In this case, I've made a proper argument because I have my claim at the top that Android phone screens are less likely to break. I have evidence that back it up. I've considered someone else's argument, but I have shown that the other argument is more valid, and then I've summarized this. That is an academic argument in its essence. Now, what are the features of an academic argument? A clear and unambiguous statement of position. In my previous example, that would be that Android phones are stronger in the terms of their screens than iPhones. Use of appropriate evidence to support this position. I've used two sources of evidence that show this for reason and one that is against, and I've demonstrated which one's more likely to be reputable. I have considered contrary arguments in the previous example, consideration of the Apple report that suggests that they're just as strong as the iPhones. But I have demonstrated convincingly that the first statement is more correct because there's a second study that backs it up. And I've made a clear line of reasoning throughout. I have not gone off on any tangent or made anything less obvious. I've just gone straight through my argument, a clear line of reasoning. And finally, there's referencing in academic arguments as demonstrated on the previous slide.